Jake here for American Muscle, and today I've got the D2 Racing Pro Series lowering springs for 2005 to 2014 Mustang GTs and V6s. If you're looking to improve the style and performance of your S197 Mustang without breaking the bank, these springs from D2 Racing are going to be exactly the ticket for you. They combine great performance with solid construction at a really palatable price tag, so it's no wonder that these are becoming so popular with Mustang owners. Now, lowering springs are a bit of a hot topic with car enthusiasts sometimes, but there's a reason that they continue to be some of the more popular modifications, or even the first ones lots of owners make. They can have a pretty big effect on not just the look, but also the performance of your car by lowering the center of gravity and reducing the amount of compression in the suspension. But reducing that wheel gap is also usually a primary goal because, let's face it, it just looks good. Now, these lowering springs from D2 Racing are going to give you about a 1.6 inch drop out front and a 2 inch drop in the rear, so it's really going to make a difference in the stance of your Mustang. Make sure you take a look at some of our customer photos to get an idea of the difference it can make. But these are much more than just an aesthetic drop. These are also progressive springs. So if you're not familiar with the term, it basically means that the springs are engineered with effectively two different spring rates. You can see the difference in how tightly the coils are wound up here at the top versus how wide they are down here at the bottom. So in terms of ride and handling, these are going to have a softer initial spring rate to help absorb bumps and road impacts. But as the suspension loads up in a corner, the spring rates are going to get stiffer, which is going to help reduce body roll and allow you to have more control over the vehicle. Now, you'd think it would be more of a compromise, but it really works out to be sort of the best of both worlds. So these are an excellent setup for a street-driven car, since you're going to get that compliant ride quality while still increasing the handling performance. However, if you are looking to make your Mustang into more of a track or strip car, it may be worth investigating some other spring options that are more designed for those types of applications. Now, that's not to say that D2 skimped on quality, because that is certainly not the case. While these are a budget-friendly option, there's some neat things baked into the recipe here. In addition to this cool purple powder coat finish, the springs themselves are cold wound and they're shot peened for durability. So that cold winding process means that the metal hasn't been heated up, so it hasn't been weakened, and that shot peening process helps to eliminate any stress points on the metal, which is going to result in the springs being strong and durable. Now, these are also designed to be compatible with your stock wheels and tires, as well as our own pre-configured wheel and tire setup, so you don't have to worry about clearance issues either. Now, one of the questions that we get a lot when it comes to lowering springs has to do with supporting modifications, the while you're in there sort of stuff. And while yes, it is possible to just put lowering springs on your car and not have it be problematic, I would highly encourage you to take a look at the health of your suspension before you do, especially with a car that's a little on the heavier side like the Mustang. The newest models of the S197 generation Mustang are going to be almost 10 years old at this point. So if your shocks haven't been replaced, they're older, higher mileage, or they might just be getting a bit worn out. You may also have some slop in your bushings, so just throwing a set of lowering springs on can yield a less than stellar result, because it's going to put unnecessary wear on already weakened components. Now, the stance might end up perfect, it might look exactly the way you want it, but remember that those stock shocks are designed to work with stock height springs. Lowering springs not only have a different spring rate like we discussed earlier, but they are also physically shorter, so your shock isn't going to compress and rebound like it would with the factory springs. All that said, this is an excellent time to consider a set of upgraded shock absorbers as well, since they are going to be better able to handle the change in rate and geometry that lowering springs provide, and we do have some great options for upgraded shocks available on our website, so be sure to take a look at those. And speaking of geometry, it's also worth noting that when you lower a car, you're going to change the geometry of your suspension overall, insofar as how everything fits together. Now, you should plan on getting your car aligned once you've got this all buttoned up, giving it a couple days to settle. You might also want to look into an adjustable panhard bar just to make sure that your axle is going to sit the way that you want it. But the biggest thing we need to talk about here is the cost. Coming in at around $250 for the set, these are going to fall towards the lower end of the category, but like we discussed, you're not going to sacrifice on quality here. These are an excellent choice for your money, especially if your car is primarily street driven. These are going to give you that cool lower look, good ride quality, and some added performance for not a whole lot of cash. As far as installation goes, these are going to get a 3 out of 3 on our difficulty scale, and that's primarily because this is an involved job that requires you to use a spring compressor. While it's not the hardest thing you can do on your ride, it is going to take you some time, around 4 hours or so, and some patience to get it done. Make sure you have a good spring compressor on hand and that you're familiar with how to use it before you undertake this. Also, make sure you get the springs set in their purchase correctly. This is again an involved job, and if you're not confident or you don't have access to a spring compressor, professional installation is always an option. Your favorite local mechanic or shop should be able to do these without an issue. And again, don't forget about that alignment once you've got this done and given things a few days to settle. And now to show you the process, let's head over to the install bay. We'll walk you through it step by step.
Tools required for this install include an impact gun, an air gun, an electric ratchet, a 13 and 21 millimeter wrench, a clip remover tool, a hand ratchet, an extension, a pass-through ratchet with a 13/16 pass-through socket, 15 and 18 millimeter swivel sockets, 10, 13 and 18 millimeter sockets, as well as a spring compressor and pole jacks or floor jack. What's up guys? Today we're installing a set of lowering springs on our Mustang. First we're gonna watch a short uninstall video showing you how to remove your factory springs. So we'll show you that clip and then I'll meet you back for the install.
First thing we're going to do in our uninstall is we're going to start by removing the 4 nuts up top. We're going to leave 2 tight. We're going to come back down and remove 2 bolts here that hold the strut in, a 10 millimeter we have here for the brake hose, a push clip, and then we'll be able to remove the strut, take it over, put it on our spring compressor, and then install our new spring, and then come back and install. So we're going to jump into it by starting by loosening the bottom bolts, the 10 millimeter and the 4 up top. So first thing we're going to do is I'm going to take my 18 millimeter, put it on my sway bar nut, and then my 8 millimeter on my 3/8 gun. And I'm going to remove this nut and remove our sway bar link from our strut. Now we have that out, we're going to remove our 10 millimeter down here that holds our brake line in place. Next we're going to remove our push clip right here. I'm going to take my clip removal tool, get behind here, pop this out like that. Then we're going to take our 10 millimeter on our gun, remove this bolt here for our brake hose. That'll get our brake hose out of the way. Next, we're going to take our 21 millimeter, remove this nut here and this nut here. This holds our strut onto our spindle assembly. I'm going to take my 21 millimeter on my 1/2 inch impact gun and break these 2 nuts loose. I'm going to pull one of them out, leave one in for now, and then we'll go up top and remove our 4 bolts holding the strut into the shock tower. So next step is we're going to remove our 4 13 millimeters up top. I'm going to take my 13 millimeter on my 3/8 electric impact gun, remove these 4, and then we'll be able to get back down and pull the strut out and remove the last bolt. So I'm going to leave that in just for now until I remove the bolt down there, and then the strut is just about ready to come out. So next step, I came in here, I'm going to grab that bolt that I left in, pull that out, pull the spindle down from the strut. I'm just going to lift it up, take off the 13 millimeter that I left on up top, and remove the strut from the car. Now that we have our strut removed from our car, I brought this over to our strut spring compressor. Now if you're doing this at home and you don't have this tool here, you can use a clamshell spring compressor. Just be very careful. This is under a lot of pressure. So what I'm going to do is just take the pressure off the spring. And once I get it compressed a little bit and get it off the spring, I'm going to take my 21 millimeter here. Now this is a tool that slides over top, holds the nut. And I'm going to take my 10 millimeter here and get on the top of the strut. Once you get it started, remove our nut, and drop our strut out from underneath. Now I'm going to release the spring under pressure so we can take the cap and the strut bearing top off. Because we're going to reuse that portion onto our new lowering spring. And we'll just remove that like that. And this way we'll put this onto our new spring. Hey guys, I'm gonna walk you through the steps of uninstall and installing our rear lowering spring. So let's get started. First thing we're gonna do, if you're doing this in your driveway, you're gonna wanna jack your car up and support and make sure you get jack stands underneath. I have it on a lift and we have our pole jacks underneath holding the rear up. What we're gonna do is loosen up our sway bars, take our shock bolts off, remove and lower our shocks, and then we'll drop the rear down and pull the coil springs out. First thing we're going to do now that we have our rear supported with our pole jacks is we're going to remove our sway bar bolt here that holds our sway bar link up into place. I'm going to put my 18 millimeter on the back here and my 15 millimeter on my 3/8 gun. We're going to remove this bolt here first. Next, we'll remove our shock bolt. So now that I removed our sway bar bolt and I went on the other side, and you're just gonna wanna repeat that same procedure on the other side and remove that bolt, you'll be able to drop your sway bar out of the way, which will give you access to your shock bolt here. So I'm gonna take my 15 millimeter on my 3/8 gun and remove my shock bolt. And now that I got that bolt out, you're going to want to repeat that same procedure on the other side. So now that we have our shock bolts out, we have our sway bar off, I'm going to start lowering our pole jacks down so we can remove our coil spring out from its pocket. I'm just going to drop it down. And then I'll go on the other side and drop this one down. And once you get it loose enough, you'll be able to pull the coil spring out, and you're just going to want to repeat the same procedure on the other side.
So now with our factory spring removed, we can install our new one. So we'll slide this up and into place. And then with this installed, we can raise up our pole jack to raise our axle up enough to get our shock into place, and then we can install our sway bar. Now with our axle raised up to meet our shock, we can slide our bolt into place. And then we can get our nut plate on, making sure the tab's in between those two notches. Thread our bolt in, and then grab a 15 millimeter socket, tighten that down. And then you can repeat that same process on the other side. Now with our shocks reinstalled, we can swing our sway bar up and get our end links into the mounts. And then we can slide our bolt through. And we'll get our nut tab on the back. Do the same on the other side. And then we'll grab our 15 millimeter socket to tighten this down. So now with our factory spring removed, I've got our new spring in the spring compressor with the top hat here. We're gonna slide our shock up through the bottom, and then we'll reinstall our nut on top. So now with our spring installed, I'm gonna take a 13/16 socket on a pass-through ratchet, and a 10 millimeter socket on the top here, and we can tighten this down. And now once we have our bolt tightened down, we can relieve tension on our spring. Slide our arms out, and we can get this installed back on the car. So now we're ready to reinstall our strut. So we're gonna get it up through the top strut mount first and get our 4 nuts placed back on top. And now thread our nuts on. If you have a strut tower brace, you can reinstall your nut on top of that. And we're just gonna leave these hand tight for now. Now we can raise our knuckle up and into our strut. And then we'll slide our bolt through. Get our nut on the other side. And then do the same thing for our lower mount. So now we can grab an 18 millimeter socket for the bolt side and a 21 millimeter wrench for the nut side and tighten these down. Now while we're down here, we can reinstall our brake line bracket. Now this is usually just a 10 millimeter bolt. However, our hardware has been replaced. So we have a 10 millimeter bolt and a 13 millimeter nut on the back. So then you can take your 10 millimeter socket. In our case, we're adding a 13 millimeter wrench to the back and tightening that down. Next, we can reinstall our sway bar end link and our 18 millimeter nut. And then we'll take an 18 millimeter socket to tighten that down. Next, we can reconnect our push clip to our strut. And now lastly, we can go back up to the top of our strut tower and take a 13 millimeter socket to tighten down all of our nuts. And then you can repeat that whole process on the other side. So that'll wrap up this review and install of the D2 Racing Pro Series lowering springs for your 2005 to 14 Mustang GT and V6. Thank you for watching, and for all things Mustang, keep it right here at AmericanMuscle.com.